Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are dialing in from, and thanks to everyone here in the audience. This is really a true honor for somebody who knows a lot about the retail world to be able to talk to an audience like yourselves. So here's a quick slide on who CoreSight Research is. We really sit on a global scale at this intersection of retail and technology. The consumer is obviously a very important part of that, and you say, so why does that matter? The consumer is 2/3 of GDP. The best way to understand what's happening with the consumer is to really look at the grocery industry. The average consumer goes to the grocery store 2.1 times per week and spends 45 minutes per visit. I think that Cristiano did a phenomenal job of laying out some of the pain points for retail. He also said that everyone has Wi-Fi, but that's not quite true in the retail world. We're still seeing retailers who are just adding Wi-Fi to their stores, and so we are truly not connected right now. This is the opportunity to understand kind of where is my stuff, but also, right, if it is not available in store, it is difficult to be sold. We highlight 8 of the key kind of challenges and pain points on this slide, but there really are many more. If you think about from a retail perspective, they're engaging with the consumer every day. ESG, or now ESHG, is really critical. And if you think about one of the greatest challenges is reverse logistics. We always think about getting the product to the consumer, but what about getting it back from the consumer? And then, depending on the condition that it's in, can we sell it? And if not, what do we do in terms of the life or the next steps for that garment or for that piece of merchandise? So we're going to kind of go through what we look at as 5 different pain points, and then we'll have 5 solutions that 5G can solve. And once again, we're just skimming the top of what we look at as the pain points in retail. I was formerly a Wall Street analyst, so very much understood the kind of inner workings of the retailers, what drove top line, margins, and bottom line. I then had the distinct opportunity to work for the largest global supply chain company, and we also own about 10,000 retail stores in China, so seeing it not only from an analyst perspective, but also from an operator. If we look at this kind of number 1 pain point here, I mean, think of you in this room, right? Well, I hope you're spending all your time kind of focusing on what I'm saying, right? There are a lot of distractions, right? We have our phones, we have social media, which I think is, we have gaming, which I assume no one's doing that right now, but this idea that we're really kind of seeing our attention being pulled in many directions. So if you get a consumer into the store, how do you engage with them? And ultimately, how do you see them transact? One thing that's very interesting, if you look at the kind of DNVBs, so the digitally native brands, we've seen a huge movement offline, right, into physical retail. Because the lowest CAC, right, the lowest customer acquisition cost is in a physical box, right? Going back to if I'm in the store, there's a sales associate, there's not a ton of competition for my attention. But what we have found is loyalty programs and gamification around those is driving much higher conversion at a very low rate. But once again, we have to be able to have that kind of gamified experience in the store and have enough broadband to do that. So I thought this was, we didn't actually have to search too far for these photos, but I thought this really kind of summed it up. If I were to drop you into most retail stores and not tell you where you are, there is a bit of, let's just say, lack of differentiation. But also, we haven't seen much change in almost 100 years. And that is, to me, where the opportunity is going forward, right? You go into a store, you see a sales associate, maybe they have your size, maybe they don't, and the sales associates themselves, they don't know, right? They go to the back to kind of look through the merchandise, but I would say in 99% of the cases, they're not really sure. Now, they do offer you the opportunity to buy the item online and ship it to your home for free, but oftentimes you've gone into that store because you want to walk home with something today, right? You want that adrenaline rush, right? That excitement around finding kind of the perfect item to bring home. If we think about the friction point. I am sure everyone in this room has been in line to buy something, and you're just waiting. You're like, they're doing a price lookup. There's a challenge with kind of, there's no price on the item, but the lines are getting increasingly long, and you're just waiting there. And so that's part of the friction, right? Kind of the waiting time, right? We do see a lot of kind of, on a website, it would be cart abandonment in stores, just kind of, dropping the merchandise and leaving. Not being able to find the item, right? The sales associate will say it's in the store. I mean, there's been times, so we went to buy a grill. And, right, not gonna name any retailers, because we want to uplift everybody. But they said there were 2 in stock, and we got there and we showed them the app, and of course, there were none. So there has been, unfortunately, as many of us have seen the headlines, a lot of issues around shrink. My gut is that nobody was walking out of the front of the store with a huge grill. And so this idea around kind of inventory accuracy, right? Understanding kind of what's in store. That is where there's still a huge amount of opportunity, because at the end of the season, right, you don't want to have a lot of kind of short sleeve shirts and bathing suits going into winter, and at the same time, you don't want to have a lot of winter merchandise going into the spring. The issue is, right, for retail, the merchandise expires. And so you have a short window, usually about 16 weeks to sell it. So if it gets delivered late, think about what's happening in supply chains right now. I mean, the amount of executives I talked to during the pandemic who are like, it's supposed to be at Long Beach, and I just found out, right, it's in the middle of the ocean, which kind of maybe is one and the same. But this idea that, right, you can't sell it if you don't have it. And then where are consumer expectations? So we spend a lot of our time in live streaming. It is truly, if you want to really engage me, it's really one of my passions. And the reason for that is we see about a 50% reduction in returns when someone buys something in a live stream. Well, why is that? Because you're actually engaging with somebody and learning about the item right then and there, and you're able to make a conclusion, and you also have this opportunity to get feedback from the community. So I've spent about a decade of my career in supply chain. And I can tell you, not sure how many of you have had actually, how many here have been in a factory? Okay. So the amount that's still done by fax on scraps of paper is phenomenal. I had this big idea around taking a lot of the data from all the factories that we had worked with and being able to, right, because so in retail, products are typically in the factory anywhere between 9 and 12 months on average before they actually show up in a store. So I was like, if we can actually see what's what's being made before it shows up on the shelf, we can start to understand trend. I was like, we can be like, people get paid a lot of money to like talk about the trends, right? Okay, it's going to be lace and it's going to be, it's going to be kind of high waist jeans and boot cut and all that. And I'm like, this could be great. The challenge was it was incredibly difficult to get that data. And what we see is when you kind of go through this, there are solutions for it, but it is still very challenging. And getting everyone on the same page because product is made how many times have you been in a store? I was at a denim retailer recently, and I went to the register with 3 pairs of jeans, and they're like, have you tried all those on? I'm like, why no? This is my size. And they're like, you should probably try them on because they're all made in 3 different factories. And so this is also part of the challenge, right? And it's cut just right, slightly different in every factory. These are some of the challenges, and we could, like I said, there's a whole list of opportunity to improve the process, but ultimately, if you think about it, not only from a profitability perspective, but from an environmental perspective, this is really why this is so critical and why there's so much opportunity to improve this industry. So going back to data, which is my favorite topic, because I believe in, let's call it the metaversian world, right, where we start to see kind of DeFi and decentralized, that retailers are going to be at the center. And they will be, we've talked about this idea of like retail at the edge, right? Because you now have all of this consumer data. You understand what people are looking for online. You understand what they're buying, what they're not buying. But you also have, right, consumers, there are communities within most of these retailers, right? Especially go on to any of the beauty websites, right? And they will actually connect you with somebody to discuss, right, kind of what it is you're interested in buying. And often a lot of these people are kind of brand ambassadors. And so if you think about the amount of data that you are able to kind of harness at any point in time, it is truly unbelievable. I spent a lot of time, so I'm very interested in kind of the physical world and how that kind of merges with the digital world. And if we think about where a lot of that happens, it's in malls, right? And they can be open air, they can be off, they can be strip, they can be kind of enclosed malls. And if you think about it, the malls are platforms, right? And what we're starting to see is this huge idea around MFCs, micro-fulfillment centers. So the consumer can shop each individual mall. There's somebody who will actually kind of gather those items and bring them to a central pickup point. The consumer can actually, this is happening, so this is not like theoretical. The consumer can try on those items, decide right then and there if they want them or not. And what we're seeing is this idea the consumer is then doing the last mile, because that's what's very expensive for retail right now. So anything that we can do to kind of solve that last mile. So companies in the grocery industry are starting to use drones to deliver anything under 5 pounds. They've seen a significant uptake. First of all, there's like the whole kind of, I think, right, retail is entertainment, right? There's a whole kind of idea around entertainment if a drone is bringing you something. But imagine if you decide you don't want something and a drone could pick it up and bring it back to the store and get it back into inventory in season. So if we think about all the data that retail has, right now, they're not doing anything to monetize that. And I believe that this is a huge opportunity for them, right? Of course, anonymizing, but helping people better understand the consumer, what it is that they want, right? We are in an inflationary environment, right? I mean, if any of you have been to the grocery store, I always say, there's kind of 10 items to look at in terms of price, and you will see it show up almost instantaneously. As a result, right, consumers are, gas prices, right, they are changing their behavior every day and every hour, and to be able to understand that real time is absolutely critical. So let's look at how 5G can power the next generation of retail. There is huge desire from the retailers. Think about it. They are sitting on piles of cash because they have had literally 4Q of 21 was one of the best, highest gross margin we've ever seen. Why? Because nobody knew where their stuff was. They didn't make enough stuff, and demand was far ahead of expectations. So literally, in my entire career, we had the best 4Q in 21, which is not what most people would think. And, right, the consumer had also been rewarded in many different ways, and they were flush with cash as well. And they still weren't traveling, and those who had thought they might travel over the holidays, unfortunately, there were a lot of last-minute trip cancellations. Great for retail because people had more money to spend in stores. So prior to the pandemic, I was based in Asia, and we spent a lot of time, right, with the big platforms. And one of the, I would say, most fun engagements that we were a part of was working with Alibaba on this idea of, kind of being in a physical, right, domain and running around malls and catching red packets. And you didn't know kind of the value of what that might be, so it could be worth the equivalent of, say, $1 or $100. But this idea that we're gamifying malls, right, going back to their platforms, closed ecosystems, and getting consumers to spend more time, visit more stores, there's all kinds of ways to incent consumer behavior. And some of it is around status, right? And some of it is around how we, so right, you want to be a KOC, a key opinion customer, right? A brand ambassador, you want people to listen to you, but also this idea around you just want to have fun and be engaged, and you want to have kind of the cool stuff. You want to be kind of first in line. And so what we're seeing is, I remember one of my friends told me, in retail, furniture is the most expensive mistake. So for anyone and I will say I'm right there, who's bought the wrong color, the wrong size, when they could not get my couch into my apartment building. So, this is very expensive. 40% of furniture is damaged before it gets to the consumer. So it is expensive in so many ways, and there's so many opportunities. So you've had companies like Wayfair, IKEA, and many others who are now utilizing AR to better understand. And it can even be as simple as, do you like the color of that mixer on your counter or not, right? I mean, there are ways, and AR is a very easy way, and this is being utilized, and we've seen real changes in terms of how consumers spend, how much they spend with one retailer, because this is also starting to, if you will, aggregate consumption into one retailer. So on this kind of solution, guiding associates, the associates, it would be, to me, and I have to say, I probably was saying this 10 years ago when I was on stage, and like, retailers know you, right? And I want to walk into a store, and I would like to get, right, anything on my device or on an electronic shelf label, an ESL, that is personalized to me. Because we had in the kind of pain points, right, this idea of unpersonalized, which is not a word, but because it's not impersonal, it's unpersonalized. There's a lot of data and a lot of information about you. They know, the whole thing is, right, let's say if I bought a pair of pants and the jacket is now on sale, I personally would love for the sales associate to tell me that. Now maybe there's an opt-in, because there's also been this idea around the creep factor, right, that they know you too well. But if I opt in, right, I want the promotions, I want to be a KOC, and I also want to know when, I want to have kind of early access to different items. And so this idea, right, that the consumer is throwing off all of this data, there are a lot of solutions, and how to empower the store associates, because right now, we also don't have enough store associates. And so to allow them to gain greater, I would say, satisfaction from their jobs, that they feel that they can help, that they're rewarded as well, that is where it really starts to come together. And retailers who are going to really win this holiday season, and let me tell you right now, we're all planning for holiday now, right? 6 months ahead of time. So for everyone who's like, oh, it's so far away, back to school, right? Stuff's going to start to hit the stores in June. That's next month. So while everyone thinks that this is a very, so far away, it really isn't. And retail, because it's so siloed, as we saw on the data slide, it does take longer to make decisions than everyone in this room might think. The idea around transparency, right? Understanding, because many retailers used to utilize third parties to produce or source, but many of them now are their own supply chain. So they are ultimately sourcing, they are looking at different factories, they are trying to understand, right, kind of what's hot and what's not, and things do change. But if you think about the fact that they go from cotton field to consumer, and all of that data, but all of that opportunity to connect in between, it's very significant. And nobody has really been able to do that to date, and there hasn't been any technology solutions. And the other thing, think about this. Because the retailers all utilize different systems, items come in to the back of the store, okay? Right there in inventory. They go out through the front. 9 times out of 10, there are different systems for back of house and for point of sale. So that is why we take physical inventories, because you actually don't know. You have an idea of what should be in the store, but you don't necessarily know. That's why we're starting to see a lot more of these on-shelf cameras that are helping retailers understand where they're out of stocks, because they truly don't have the data available or on hand to know that. So this is where I think we have seen so much growth. If you think about these quick commerce retailers, right? The GoPuffs, the Getir, the Gorillas, right? This idea that, I need it and I need it fast. And hey, living in New York City, right? We were all like, we would, these are some of the things that I do. Like that, right? You'd order something, you're like, how quickly can it get here? 7 minutes, right? And so this idea that expectations of the consumer are in a different place than we've seen them before, right? I want it fast, I want it in stock. And what we're also seeing on the quick commerce side is that many of the consumer packaged goods companies are like, we're getting data in 30 minutes or less in terms of how the consumer is behaving. So they're moving marketing dollars. I mean, this is the thing. This is where retail, right? You've got the marketing dollars, which are quite significant, and they move very quickly because they can into different technologies, different retail channels, and that's some of what we've seen. So a company called Drone Express has been doing a lot with Kroger and seeing this is interesting, right? Because consumers, especially with gas at, between $5 and $6 a gallon, let's say, they don't want to drive, especially if they're more rural. So those consumers who live farther from grocery, especially in like tier 2 and tier 3 cities, they're utilizing more of these unique ways to kind of get products delivered to them. And I know Cristiano talked a lot about the car. We've been very focused on car commerce. So there's a company here called Mavi, and what they're doing is they're literally linking with retailers and also with restaurants to, as you're in the car and you're like, I need a blue button-down shirt, 15.5, 32, where's the closest store that I can go to? They will direct you there, and in many cases, right, the item, you're just driving by and picking it up. That technology exists today. It is still, I would say, kind of fairly new to 2022, but we're starting to see the beginning of all of this coming together. All right, so the last solution, helping retailers truly understand the data. First of all, we have to kind of be able to aggregate it. If you think about it, right, there's supply chain data, there's marketing, there's the consumer. There are so many different areas that are throwing off data in the retail world. That's why it's, everyone's like, oh, retail, stores and consumers. It's so far beyond that. And the ability to understand who's in your stores, who is moving through your malls. Because the opportunity, so think about this, right? Employees come in and out of malls. Well, you as a mall owner, you want to understand the consumer. And the ability to start to differentiate who's a consumer and who is an employee, these are things that really do change how retailers are able to aggregate data and also to ultimately, kind of drive dollars their way as well. So this was just to sum it all up, we actually, because we like to be marketing oriented as well at CoreSight, we put together our own 5G network, but for retail. And if you think about it, going visual, making it easy to shop, guiding associates, making it easy so along the way they know something about the consumer, they know what they want, they know how to kind of get them to convert. Growing analytics, having the data available, and transparency and an ESG world, or ESHG, is so critical to understanding, for the consumer, because they want to make sure that it's organic cotton or recycled materials or whatnot, and then just getting it done fast. So I really want to thank you for your time today. As you can tell, I'm incredibly and always excited about this industry because there's so much opportunity for everyone in this room to really work together to drive higher top line, better margins, but ultimately really to help the consumer find what they want, when they want it, where they want it, and how, and to, if you will, really drive a much more sustainable world. So thank you very much.